Welcome to Black and Gold Digital Edition, a behind-the-scenes look at your Pittsburgh Steelers.
Hi, welcome to week 13 of our digital show. I'm Jay Pushko alongside Mike Fenner and Kent Urbanski. And Kent, you and I made the trip to Cincinnati this past week to take in the game between the Bengals and the Steelers. And boy, Cincinnati certainly blew the doors off of Pittsburgh. They came out and they were playing awfully well, and they never let up throughout the course of that contest, and they won 41-10. Where do the Steelers stand after this? That was almost a must-win from that point.
Yeah.
Now it's looking pretty bleak.
Well, it seemed the Steeler fans that were there were more into it than the Steelers that were themselves. So whether that West Coast trip had a little impact on them, but they looked flat right from the start, and they were never in it, you know. And you and I driving home, we're listening to the post game from Cincinnati and how the players were talking about. They were confident. They knew they were going to take it to the Steelers, and they did.
And they almost felt like they won the AFC Championship, too,
Right.
so they almost need to pump the brakes just a little bit. But it's a huge win for that franchise as they try to turn it around. And full disclosure, this man to my left, before the game, I asked him just hours ago, what do you think? What's your gut telling you? He's like, well, I think Cincinnati's going to win this game. And then you followed it up by saying, and I hate to say it, but I think they're going to score on their opening drive. And they did.
Yeah.
So you're the great Nostradamus.
Well, maybe. I don't know. Although I'm losing in the towel race
You are.
know, on Black and Gold Today's show. But I think I'll stop picking with my heart and picking with my brains from here on in. But anyway, I really thought that I was impressed with Cincinnati, and I was impressed with Joe Burrow and what they have built there. And I think you might be looking at the team who might be dominating that division down the road. They have built around him. They've done it right through the draft, and their mindset and the way they're going about it. I think that's the team that's gonna roll that division for a little bit.
And Mike, what did you take away this week going down to the practices and just everything, just the mood, the vibe, just knowing that there's 6 games left in the season and they really have to almost win out and having a chance of making the postseason?
But that right there is the point. They all want to pump the brakes and say, guys, we can't focus on winning 6 games or winning out. We got to win 1.
Right.
That's all they're talking about is don't look at that schedule because it's a scary schedule to look at. But it's true. You cannot control what's going to happen in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. They have to focus on everything they can to prepare for this one game. And if they can get a win, it completely flips the script, and you've got a chance to get yourself back up into this race with so many AFC playoff type teams in the mix. They have to find a way to win this game. You can't be thinking about Minnesota or Tennessee or Kansas City or those last 2 games. They can't get it all back, and they can't get these last 3 weeks back. You got to focus on what's in front of you, not behind you, not ahead of you. And that's pretty much been the message, I think, is that these guys really are focused on what's it going to take to slow this offense down, what's it going to take to go up against this Ravens defense, how do we get a win any way possible at home.
And Tim Benz made a great history lesson for us on Black and Gold today, just talking about the history and the short history of this rivalry. Just recently, all these games usually boil down to 1 possession. So even though the Pittsburgh's in this funk right now, they're just right in it just as much as Baltimore or anybody else in a divisional matchup.
Absolutely. There's no reason to think they can't win this game, especially when you consider the way the Ravens have won their games this year. 6 out of these 8 wins, 1 possession. We've seen some improbable victories from Baltimore where it seems like they have just found a way to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat against some inferior opponents, too. I mean, look at their game against Chicago. Look at their game against Detroit. Those
Miami.
results didn't go Pittsburgh's way. They went Baltimore's way, but they were very similar type of games. So there's no reason to think that maybe that luck starts to run out a little bit, or maybe even just this week, you know, they don't get that one play at the end of the game that makes the difference. Maybe Pittsburgh makes the play, or maybe Baltimore just comes up a little bit short for once, and you just never know in this league. Anyone can beat anyone, especially in the division where these guys are so familiar with one another.
And Kent, Lamar Jackson, and rightfully so, has been put on a pedestal just because of his athleticism and his ability to really change the game and just be able to put points on the board. But you and I were listening to the Sunday night game on the way back, and it was almost comical to hear the amount of turnovers that were taking place against the Browns. So, I mean, even though Lamar is a great talent, he is still gettable when it comes to defense.
Right.
And Pittsburgh's got some guys up front that they could challenge him a little bit, but it's going to be a daunting task.
Yeah, I don't know that they do, you know, and I think he's looking at the tape of the last 2 Steeler games and how they were exposed in the run so much, and I think you're going to see him running the ball a lot. You know, he's going to test that defense, and I think he's going to have a lot of success because he's much more of a running talent than the past 2 quarterbacks are. And I think he's going to find gaps to have big splash plays against that defense that I think is they're banged up front. They don't have they have Cam Hayward moving positions to try to
I was just going to bring
it.
that up.
I mean, and you're doing that in December when you should be finding your identity should already be established. Now they're still scrambling guys around and talking about changing schematics and everything else. You can't be doing that in December.
T.J. Watt now being out.
TJ, and that's going to hurt them, So, but I don't know. I think if the Steelers, with a home game like Mike was saying, that luck has to run out for Baltimore at some point. These two teams throw all the records aside and everything sort of, get into a nasty matchup every time they play. So they got to play the game, like Tomlin says.
Finally, guys, Cam Hayward even said it in the postgame after the Cincinnati loss, is that they have to start playing better in the first quarter. I mean, that's been their big bugaboo lately. I mean, is that going to be the key for them? If we see that they get off to another slow start, it's going to be a long afternoon into the evening for them?
Right, I think it is, and I think but I think the culture of this team is a little shaky right now. When Chuck Noll was coach of the team, he talked about, if I have to motivate you, I'll fire you. Now you have players like Claypool talking about wanting to have music. You would never get away with that kind of like in the Noll era of coaching. So maybe the music, then maybe they can play head, shoulders,
if you were
knees, and toes,
if
or
you were
something
8-3
during
or
warm-ups,
7-4, then yeah, we'll play some music. But
Yeah,
when you're
right.
5-1, I mean,
You got to get down to the nitty gritty and establish what made this team good down in the past, and that was intimidation, and they just don't have that right now.
Mike, do you see that too?
Big talking point with Ben Roethlisberger. His press conference this week was very intriguing and there a lot of depth to it. And he was talking about how early on in his career, so many of those guys, those vets in the locker room that had been passed down from the Steeler way and knowing how to do it the right way and just trying to be respectful. And a big talking point for Ben was talking about Mr. Rooney coming into the room, and you always wanted to pay respect and listen to what he had to say. Just talked about all the wisdom that he had brought down, to these players, to the locker room. And he's like, I don't want to have music on in there. I want to be respectful. I want to hear what he has to say. And it just wasn't something that they did. And he said eventually, he kind of had to relent on that because he's one of the last of the Mohicans here. I mean, he's really, truly one of those last guys from a previous era, if you want to call it that.
But these younger guys just don't get that.
Yeah.
I don't think they've not been exposed to that, and I don't know how you change that. I really don't. And I think it has to come down to Mike Tomlin gaining control of that locker room again and saying, look, either we're going to watch film. If you're not doing your job, you're out. We'll put somebody else in, and that's what it's got. That's what it has. It has to start at the top with him.
He was asked about carrying on. Is it your responsibility to carry on that mystique of the Steeler way and to make sure these guys understand how important it is and the history and the tradition? And Joe Schobert was asked about if he heard the talk from Rocky Bleier and all these other Steeler legends, and he's like, no, I really haven't. I've kind of blocked it out. It's really not going to do us any good, but. It's interesting. I don't know. Times are changing within the locker room, within the franchise, and different guys. Especially when you consider you take away a Ben, a Cam Hayward, some guys like that. I mean, there's just not a lot of those guys left.
No question about it.
It's a world of TikTok and dancing on logos and stuff like that now. You would never see that during a Chuck Noll era team.
Yeah.
Oh, those guys. Yeah, those guys would be
they
gone.
brought it. Even after, like the Greg Lloyds and those guys and the James Harrisons, they wouldn't put up with that kind of stuff.
I'd be too scared to confront them in the locker room.
Absolutely. And
something like that.
Intimidation, it's true with the defense.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for the insight as always. We'll see what the Steelers can do against the Ravens in week number 13. And for you, thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks for watching. Join us again next week for Black and Gold Digital Edition.